Hey, welcome back to the BVB podcast. My name's Jacob, joined as always by Carver. How's it going, man? I feel like it's been a little. The match obviously a little bit of a downer. I'm not maybe that upset, and we can talk about that later. It feels like a slower week because we don't have the excitement, a more or a less eventful week for sure. Coming off the excitement of the Champions League and all that. But how are you doing, man? How's it going?
Doing well, thanks. Yeah, as a Dortmund supporter, a bit frustrated. And you're right, there's no international matches this week, so it is a bit more calm. And maybe we need that right now, given the headspace that the game left me with on Saturday. How are you?
I'm doing good. Busy week at work, and with a lot going on, and so I'm just tired and ready to get through the week. Um, and ready to get Champions League final, honestly, because it feels like we're just waiting. Like, given our spot in the Bundesliga, we don't have a ton to play for, especially after this match. Now we don't got anything to play for, and it's just like kind of trudging through the Bundesliga so we can get to the excitement of this Champions League final. Before we talk about the sad Mainz game, though, we are going to get into. We have a BVB women, BVB Frauen team update that we're going to get into a little bit later. But before we preview Darmstadt, the final match of the season in the Bundesliga, uh, we we already Dortmund already has a signing. I guess I don't know a lot of info, but Carver, what do you got?
I don't have much either, to be honest. I mean, I did, at least I should say I don't know much about him. I should give them the name first. So we signed Justin Lerma. He is a young, talented Ecuadorian midfielder. The contract is going to be signed for the 2026-27 season once he turns 18. So this is not an immediate signing. He's not going to be in the first team anytime soon. But apparently the club, this is a quote from Sebastian Kale, we've been following Justin for some time now and have been in close contact with the player and his family ever since. Justin is one of the best South American players of his age group, and we are delighted to have him to be able to recruit an outstanding talent for Borussia Dortmund. So the club has had an eye on him for a while. We need another midfielder. I'm not sure exactly where he plays in the midfield. Maybe he's. I'm not gonna say much more because I don't know anything about him. But either
And,
way, hopefully it's
and
gonna be exciting.
Yeah, and he might not be. He's definitely not going to be playing for a while. And
No,
um, obviously, we got some other young and upcoming midfielders. As we touched on, I'm going to get the name wrong again. Probably, I don't think anyone corrected us or no one said who was right because we both gave two different pronunciations to try to hit it all. But Vetchin is a possibility for next season. Um, but yeah, you can find. I know that we don't have a ton of information for you, so if you really want to dive in, you can definitely get into YouTube highlights. I know people in our Discord chat were talking about him quite a bit and dropping some highlights and saying he looks good, but definitely a prospect and someone for the future. And I don't know, we touched on it before. Summer's going to be interesting. We'll get into all that when it comes, but for now, let's talk Mainz. And just they break our hearts again. But this was the match. I would say was, I don't know what was more. Last year was obviously more disappointing. It's just Mainz destroying our hopes and dreams. Maybe our hopes and dreams weren't as high this time around, but the matter in the like how this game played out and going 3-0 in the first 22 minutes is just brutal. We did make 10 changes again, swapping almost everybody out from our Champions League starting 11 with Meyer in goal. So Kobel getting the rest. We had Murray playing at left back again. Schlotterbeck was the only same player from the Champions League 11. Then we saw Sule come in. Wolf, Royce, Mechia, Ozchan, Makoko, JBG, and Mullen is our 11 this time. So, I mean, pretty similar to what we saw the last Bundesliga match with the exception of Schlotterbeck in there.
right. And Mainz were also unbeaten in their last 7 games. And Dortmund essentially started their B team, very heavily rotated. But again, the stark contrast of performances between the international matches and domestic is truly appalling. I don't think that's really an excuse to excuse the performance that we saw on Saturday. I mean, the shortcomings of Terzic and his coaching abilities and the lack of depth and quality in this team were once again exposed over the weekend. Regardless of a few good runs early on from JBG, the team just simply looked clueless. Dortmund had 68% of possession, despite Mainz completely controlling the flow of the game. You see the same reoccurring issue again here. Center halves passing back and forth with no conviction going forward. the one instance of Meyer completely giving the goal away. Bit out of character for him, given how calm he usually is on the ball, but with no structure ahead of him, players not making themselves available, a lot of stagnation, not a focal point in attack, like a true number 9, really. I mean, not trying to have a shot at Mokoko, but he's just not the same player profile whatsoever compared to Fulkrug or Haller. So we have no one to cross to. We have no one to hoof long balls up forwards for hold up play. The team just, again, very clueless. And this was overall a very unprofessional and also unacceptable performance, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I know like the commentators harped on it so much about this being the B team, and I mean they same with the last match too, right? Where we dominated though and won 5-1, like a incredible performance. I think that is what's super like disappointing. Like we saw a really good performance when maybe we didn't expect it, and now we get the complete opposite. Um, and yeah, I mean the Meyer giveaway. I felt so bad. I love Meyer so much. I've said it so many times,
Yeah, me
backed him
too.
so many times. Anytime he's come in, he's been able to step up Champions League matches, Bundesliga. Yeah, definitely not great. And but like Mainz was pressing so hard, and it looked like we just didn't know how to get. Like we were trying. Meyer was he. It seemed like he was playing a lot of dangerous balls. I felt in putting the ball in not the best position. So I think it kind of made sense. Like I mean, the mistake was worse than him just playing a dangerous ball to a player. It was just straight up to the Mainz defend or attacker, I guess, who was able to capitalize and put it in the net. But it's like we just couldn't play out. We were under so much pressure. Although yes, B team, we still had players in this team who could be considered A team. Like I think anyone would, if you see Mullen in a lineup. Of course, Sancho's been playing out of his mind lately, right? So maybe he doesn't take him from that position, but he's been injured, and that's kind of what led to him being out. I think some would argue maybe Mullen gets a start over Adeyemi, depending on the match. We've seen really good performances from Adeyemi. I'm not arguing that Mullen should be in there, but I think no one would be upset or anything if you saw Mullen in a starting 11 and what you would say is the A team, right? Like he's a player who
Yeah.
should be pushing for
Yeah.
starting 11. JBG, same thing. We maybe him not as much as Mullen, but we have seen him get a run of starts and put on really good performances. Obviously, Royce, we don't need to say. I don't think we need to say anything about Royce. I don't think anything in this game was his fault necessarily. Maybe he could have had a little more influence, but I think one of the big faults is I think that Osh-Chan and Mecha, who just kind of felt like did nothing to break up, win anything in the midfield, or play support to our defenders. Murray had just a stinker, and Sule, I think he has not been playing, he has not been starting, but he is a player who we expect to be pushing for that 11 spot as well. So yes, B team, but I think you'd argue like we should have enough to put on a better show than what we did. And I think there is something to these players. Like one, they not a lot of them have minutes, and they don't have that chemistry where they haven't been playing week in week out together, and maybe that is the issue.
Right.
But I think the contrast from the previous match to this one was just abysmal.
Yeah, and if you look at Mainz on the table, they sit in 15th after the weekend, but they have been really clawing out of that relegation zone for several weeks now because every point matters at this point in the season. And they are definitely, after you saw the performance that they put on Saturday, they earned themselves the right to be at least in contention of being out of that relegation zone. And I feel bad for any Cologne supporters because we really could have done them a solid by putting Mainz back down, and of course Cologne getting their 5th win of the season. That was huge for them, and we just had no answer for Mainz. And you mentioned their pressing. Yeah, it was early, it was aggressive, but I wouldn't say it was anything too complex or even that physically, like super physically demanding this game. And we said plenty of times on the show, if teams have just the belief and have a go at us, Dortmund will piss their pants and just cough up the ball, be unable to deal with almost any opposition of any quality. And you saw that again once on Saturday. Yeah, a few things you mentioned. Moray was definitely targeted and cooked all game for his lack of pace and stature. Mainz really targeted that early on. Again, you're seeing the conviction from their side. They know what they want to do, and they know how to attack Dortmund. And we didn't have an answer for any of that. Mecha, I'll try to keep it quick, man. I cannot wait for the day for him to be out of this club. He's only been here. I understand he's only been here for a short amount of time and he's had his injuries, but this is another flaccid and unconvincing performance when he has the fitness to start a game. It might not be at 100%, whatever, but still, just his attitude when it comes to body language, his work rate, his passing, his turning, his overall execution in his game is just utter shit. Let's be real. I mean, the only thing this man has going for him right now is a somewhat decent shot, and his minimal redeeming qualities fail to justify both the outrageous price tag and also the complete disregard for the club's core values outlined by the Grundwerte Codex. And I stand by everything I just said.
Yeah, and Mecha is one I meant to mention too. In the not that we rate him as the A squad, but I guess what the club valued him as
Yeah,
when they
yeah, I
spent the money.
fucking
You know
sure
what I mean?
hope so.
It's like, okay, you're spending that money. You hope you're getting a player who is pushing the 11, who can come in and improve the squad, and that's not what we've gotten all season. But just another name where it's like, he's a player for the price tag who should be pushing it and shouldn't be just chalking up another shit performance, like you mentioned. Like, dude, grow a pair and try to like do something in this game.
Yeah,
Try to take control. I don't know.
he doesn't take control. That's the thing. It's not just if he didn't have the fitness to put in a full shift and runs, I don't know, 55, 60 minutes or whatever, but it's his lack of quality. I mean, every time his turning, he's so slow with his turns. He's clueless when he does turn. He doesn't know how to advance the ball that well. He gives up the ball a lot in unnecessary situations. He doesn't track back. He doesn't track runs. It's a no for me at his original price tag, which was like, I don't know, 16 around that area, give or take, let alone double that. It's completely outrageous. And again, a reason why I have trust issues with Terzic continuously to this day. He's done remarkable things in an international competition this year, but you are seeing, again, the shortcomings of him as a coach and also in terms of just like what his signings and more of the back end of the club. It's definitely still a concern and something that the club should be considering going forward.
Was there anyone else you're gonna hit on? Because you kind of or are you gonna stop at Mecha?
I mean, there's not. I know, like I mentioned, Myers poor giveaway already. Wolf was not that convincing either. We made lots of changes at the break to bring on more of the quality. We could play with more urgency, obviously attack more directly too. But it just wasn't enough. It's such a deep hole to climb out of, even for players that are in the A squad who are going to be playing in the Champions League final in 2 weeks' time. It wasn't enough. And even again, it didn't have a physical number 9 at top either. And then this game, it sucks because I want Mukoko to have more minutes, but she's just not really cutting it in those areas either at the moment, unfortunately. But really, no one is.
Yeah. Um, yeah, as you mentioned, we made subs at the half. We go down 3 goals, 22 minutes. I mean, my redeeming take from this match is it wasn't worse than that. I don't know if there was anything from the second half that stood out to you. No, we tied 0-0 in the
Again,
second half.
we looked a little bit better. Again, there was somewhat of a structure. Players had a better idea of what they wanted to do, but again, 3 goals and away against a team who are desperate for any sort of points to avoid relegation. I think that's a tough ask for almost any club in the world or any side in the world.
Yeah. So, I mean, my takeaway from this game, like, obviously, like watching the game, I was extremely frustrated and disappointed. Now, having a few days settled, like, I'm less concerned about it because I can look at heavy rotation, let the Champions League guys have a break. I'm assuming we're going to see this coming weekend, we're going to see the Champions League squad because they need to get a game in, right? You don't want them to go cold for 2 weeks. So they're going to need to get a game in. I think there will still be some rotation for sure because you don't want to risk injury or anything like that.
Yeah.
Given our spot on the table and we're kind of sitting there in 5th, like we're not going to budge from that. We're not going to. I'm not happy with the performance. I'm not happy that those guys couldn't step up. But I'm not super mad either, just given where we are, how everything played out, right? Like given, I mentioned it all. It doesn't bother me too much. And I'm still just optimistic and looking ahead to the weekend. What I will be upset is if we do another rotated squad or like a half rotated squad this weekend and put on a a ship performance at home, which I'm guessing is going to be it will be Royce's last game, but maybe his last start. I'm guessing he's going to start again, and then maybe we'll see Brant come on later in the game
Right.
because again, those guys need minutes. But that's when I'll be upset, and that's when I'll be concerned. And I guess what I'm getting at is like this performance doesn't make me concerned for the Champions League final. I'm not happy that these guys. We clearly have the Champions League 11 now, and those guys aren't doing anything to push them or make them better. Clearly, it doesn't look like it. But again, overall, this performance doesn't. I'm not too bothered by it. But we'll see what happens this weekend.
Well, it's even more frustrating, too, that Leipzig have dropped points, and we wouldn't have caught them in terms of the table if we would have won, but we would have been just right behind them, just by 1 point, right? And Leipzig are away at Frankfurt in the last day of the season. Frankfurt need to get some 3 points to keep Hoffenheim at bay so they can guarantee their Europa League spot. I could be wrong, but I think even maybe guaranteeing somehow a 6th Champions League spot. I forget how that works exactly, but
if we win Champions League, then it'll go down to 6th.
Crazy. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I mean, of course, Frankfurt want that as well, but just again, it just makes you wonder, why are we pissing away these kind of points? Yeah, it frustrates me, and I'm still slightly frustrated, but I am trying to clear my mind, and I hope the players do too, because we have another big game in Darmstadt for a lot of different reasons. I mean, of course, you have Royce's last game. I agree with you. I think the players absolutely need to keep their fitness at a very high level going into Champions League. Also, the confidence high too, right? We want the last game's going to be at home, right? Yes, it is. Why am I? Yeah, it is going to be at home. You want to just have a right send off for Royce, and of course, just the players, and give them the boost that they need going to London. That's very, very vital. And of course, what better team in the league to do that against, right? Darmstadt are just dead last in the league. They only have 3 wins this season. They conceded 82 goals, so there should be no reason. Of course, we have some knocks here and there for certain players, but Terzic should find a good balance between the things that you mentioned to get not only a good result, but set ourselves up for success come June 1st.
Yeah, I mean, Darmstadt, as you mentioned, already relegated. They lost 6-0 at home to Hoffenheim, which, I mean, yeah, they lost 6-0 at home. What else was in there? Finish it. There's 5 Bundesliga team already. There's no reason we shouldn't go out and maybe beat them 8 or 9, right? Like we better lay the smack down. Yeah, maybe this is a team where you can play the B squad, you can rotate. But again, for the Champions League aspect of it, like our guys need to play, they need to be in form. They can't be cold. So yeah, we need to go in and put on a show as Marco Reus's send off. Like let's send him off in style.
Right.
With just a Darmstadt thrashing. And sorry to the Darmstadt guys, but we got to let them have it.
You guys are going down already, right?
Yeah, they can. Yeah, they can rotate too.
We didn't put you there.
I mean, do you have a predicted 11? Do you think it will be the Champions League squad, or who are your rotation guys?
I think a lot of what you mentioned already. I think Royce gets a start for obvious reasons. I mean, ain't no way he comes on with just a few minutes left.
I was kind of surprised Sula was captain in that last one. Like, why not let Royce have it? I don't know. But
I think it'll be leaning more towards the Champions League 11, but still have some rotation here and there just so we can solidify like a good start, hit the ground running, overwhelm them quickly, and put the game to bed. And then we could start not relaxing. I almost said that word, but just, trying new things with, implementing some of these players, but hopefully just on like a different level to, where we can be successful.
Yeah, I agree. I already mentioned it. Like Royce starts. I think we see Brant come in later. I fully expect like Maatsen, maybe Schlotterbeck gets a rest to start since he started this last match.
Yeah.
Hummels probably comes back in. I don't know. Maybe you just don't even risk it. Maybe you let him stay safe. I've been saying it all year, and I'm always worried about him. But
it's elder abuse at this point.
He'll probably be good. Yeah, and Rierson right back. Like I would say mainly the 11. Maybe I don't know. I'd say the 11 minus Royce and Brant. Maybe you give Brant and maybe Schlotterbeck is out. I'm just all over the place. I should have written this down and I could have read it properly instead of just babbling like an idiot. But hey, Darmstadt Saturday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. Before we get into the women's team, I know you mentioned Köln and obviously Mainz getting this result. We talked about it when we had Jake for a couple reasons. Jake came to our hometown of St. Louis. Maybe did not have the best time hanging out here. But so sorry about that. Sorry about not helping Cologne either. Although they had a really good performance with that comeback win, and that's just what I'm getting at. Like the bottom of this Bundesliga table, spicing up quite a bit. The relegation battle is looking pretty spicy, which I don't hate to see because I like exciting matches that mean a lot. So yeah, I mean we already mentioned Darmstadt is on the way out. Cologne, although they did get that win, they're still in a relegation spot at 27 points after beating Union Berlin, who are sitting on 30. So although they're still 3 points off, like that was so big of them for them to win over Union. And yeah, they got to get the result this week, and they still need some help. And then Mainz is in there too on 32 points.
Yeah, imagine if they didn't win. Yeah, it would have been 27, 29, 30.
And then Bochum just above with 33, Gladbach at 34. So I mean, it's really tight down there. I don't have the full schedule who's playing who this weekend, but I don't know. It's going to be exciting to watch and see how the bottom of the table shakes out after this Saturday. But
Cologne are away at Heidenheim. Berlin are hosting Freiburg. So, I mean, it could be a toss-up either way, honestly. Those two are playing relatively equal oppositions. They're right next to each other on the table, actually.
So, well, I don't know if Cologne... Is Cologne out? Cologne might be out because they're behind on goal differential.
Oh, yeah, they very well could be.
All right. RIP. Sorry, guys. It was a nice
Disregard
thought.
this segment.
I don't know. Delete. All right. Just going to... And we're back. And after I deleted everything we just talked about. No. Carver, do you want to get into the BVB Frauen women's update?
Yes, it is always consistent, which I love about them. Anytime Dortmund disappoint, please feel free to point to the women's team. BVB Frauen have just 2 games left in their division as their season comes to an end, which is the Landesliga in the 5th tier of German women's football pyramid. Please feel free to check me if I'm wrong on that. But what I do know is BVB Frauen have 21 wins and just 1 draw. They also have a record-breaking 16 wins in a row. So they have already clinched promotion for another year. Excuse me. But they also have the ability or opportunity to end the season undefeated, at least in their league. Marie Grote is the 3rd leading scorer in the league with 28 goals. But the goals are really spread out in a great way amongst a bunch of other players on this team. Like Mandy Reinhardt has 17. Danielle Tanley-Tan has 14, and then there's like a half dozen other players below that have 7 or 8 goals. So again, lots of goals for just spread out amongst the rest of the team. It's not just 1 or 2 people, carrying the rest of them. It's really a collective game. Defensively, they're rock solid as well. A good core unit. They have only 6 goals conceded this whole season so far. So very not only impressive, but promising going forward as well. Again, having a good core group of players and just remaining like a video game series, like from day one that we mentioned. It's crazy, and it's very fun to watch and a witness as they continue to climb the table in German women's football.
Yeah, the complete opposite of the up and down roller coaster that is the women's team. Although I mean, it's still riding that high with the Champions League final. But if you just need some consistent goals and consistent wins and want to be happy all the time, you just watch the Dortmund women's team. I also realize, I don't know why I'm so self-conscious lately of us getting called out, because it happened maybe once a couple weeks ago, more recently, where we, I don't know, get called out for pronunciations. Obviously it's still getting me. So congrats. You guys freaked me out enough that now I'm self-conscious on everything I say. I said BVB Frauen women. I know that's repetitive. I know
like
Frauen.
chai tea.
Yeah. Or like, can I get a cheese quesadilla? It's the same thing. You don't need to say it. It's just me being an American and emphasizing that it's the women's team. So sorry to our German listeners. I'm not that much of an idiot. I'm definitely an idiot. I don't know everything, but I know I repeated myself just in 2 different languages. Just have to say.
Hey, everyone knows from day one that the bio of our show is from an American perspective, baby.
And it's okay. It's okay. If you don't know how to pronounce things, that's fine.
That's all right.
But I know it's not BVB Frauen women. I'm just all right. Now I can move on.
Yeah.
With the Champions League coming up, we'll obviously talk about this match as we get closer. I'm not going to do the big preview yet. But I do want to shout out, I mentioned it earlier, but shout out our Discord and shout out to all the new listeners who have chimed in and been jumping on as Dortmund has progressed through the Champions League and made it to the final. It's been really cool to see all the numbers keep growing and a lot of new people joining the Discord. And I don't remember their names specifically, but I do know there's already been a couple of people who met through our Discord who live in the same city who are now going to go watch the Champions League final together, which is awesome. Because that's what it's about, right? Like that's why we started this show. We've mentioned it multiple times. Like Carver's the only person I knew who was a Dortmund supporter when I was getting into the team. So, and then we started this podcast because we're like, I don't have anyone to talk Dortmund with. Let's start talking Dortmund. And I know there's a lot of people like that who maybe are getting into Dortmund. Maybe you're just now becoming a fan as they make this Champions League run. And maybe you want to find some other people to go watch games with is like our biggest thing, because we have a really cool supporter group here in St. Louis where we live who goes to Amsterdam Tavern to watch almost every game together. And it's really cool to have that community, but now to have that community online virtually with our Discord, and to see those guys get together and be like, oh, let's meet up at X place and go watch together. Like that's awesome. And that's it. I don't know. It's a really almost like full circle kind of weird thing where I'm like, this is why we're doing it. This is why we sit down and talk every week. It's really cool to see those connections happen. So if you haven't already, if you want to join our Discord, you can head to, maybe you're not on social media. You can head to the link in the description of this episode and click on that Discord link to join our server and start meeting some other Dortmund fans. And it's a good way to connect with us throughout the week, throughout the match day and everything in between. So make sure you join our Discord or follow us on socials too. If you don't do that yet, the BVB pod on Twitter and Instagram. And we really appreciate you guys hanging out, listening. Carver, you got anything else?
Now feel free to give us a rating and enjoy the countdown. We are just about right over 2 weeks away from the Champions League final, everyone. And it has hit me, but at the same time, it almost hasn't at the same time. Just the excitement of being in such a prestige part of the competition. So enjoy these next few weeks.
And I know there's been a lot of talk about Marco Reus. I'm saving this for the last end of the episode. Been a lot of Marco Reus chatter, connecting with other Dortmund players and friends that he might know. And I'm just going to say, I can't speak anything to it. So if you want to know more, if you want to get Carver's take, and since they shouted you out, I'm just going to shout him out right here to make sure it actually happens. Carver will be joining another podcast.
They haven't actually said anything to us yet.
I'm going to text them right after this. They said it in a podcast episode. It has to happen now. So Carver might be joining some of our podcast friends to talk about Marco Reus in this potential move to MLS. So if you're interested in that, I'll let Carver tweet about it on our page and give the info, but I can say nothing.
To piggyback on that, the last episode they did was very comprehensive of Reus and the possibility of him coming to St. Louis, the MLS club. For those of you who have seen like the interest, or at least concrete interest in the few potential destinations for him. That was genuinely, I think, a very great video. It's like 2/3 of the way in or so when they actually start talking about Reus. So definitely check that out. Yeah.
And I mean, obviously not everyone who listens is from St. Louis.
Oh yeah.
But I do know there's also been a lot of chatter in our Discord about people from across the country, like wanting to see Reus come to MLS and their team over St. Louis and vice versa and all this stuff. So I would say like this breakdown. So the other podcast is Flyover Footy. It's a St. Louis soccer podcast. And they primarily talked about Reus and his connection or the possibility of St. Louis. But I think they really hit on like Reus stats and how he matches up with MLS. So even if you're not a St. Louis fan, that's fine. It's still a cool breakdown to see how he could fare and compete in MLS.
Yeah.
We'll give a plug we'll plug for Flyover Footy, and we'll link that latest episode in the description of this one if you want to check it out and be watching for Carver joining their show, which I'm gonna speak into existence.
Yeah, that's exactly right now. What it is. Yeah.
All right. No, we really appreciate you guys hanging out, listening. Shorter episode this week because disappointing match. Right. Just not as much going on. But we appreciate you taking the time to listen. And we got something special next week after the final thing. We might have a couple special things. Nope. Okay. I don't know. We'll be back with
speaking more into existence.
There is. We'll talk about it off pod. But no, we'll see you guys later.